I'm Bob Rosen. I'm the author of Bobby in Naziland. As I've been hearing at events and as I've been reading online, a number of people have taken issue with the title, Bobby in Naziland. My cousin read the book and said, I hate the title. If I were your publisher, I'd make you change it. So I'm going to read the beginning of one of the chapters that should clarify why I chose that title. It's chapter 3, and it's called Heil Irwin. Heil Irwin. Yes, the war had ended 7 years before I was born, but that didn't mean it was over. It would never be over, not as long as the people who lived through it remained alive. World War II, along with the ghosts of the Brooklyn Dodgers, lingered like a mass hallucination on East 17th Street and in large swaths of the surrounding borough. It was no longer a shooting war, of course. It was a mop-up operation, a war of words and ideas, a constant pounding of more verbal nails into the Nazi coffin, a stake through the vampire Nazi heart, a daily confrontation with the knowledge that the Nazis weren't all dead, that some of them roamed free in South America, and that somehow the Third Reich might again rise from its ashes. Perhaps it was even a premonition that someday, after enough time had passed, certain people would begin to suggest that 6 million Jews were not systematically slaughtered in death camps, that it was all a big misunderstanding, a misinterpretation of history, that it was really typhus that had wiped them out, that it was an unavoidable public health catastrophe, no different than the bubonic plague. And even if it wasn't, who's to say that they didn't deserve it anyway? A day never passed when I didn't hear somebody express an opinion about the Nazis, usually my father. All you had to do to get him going was point to one of those cute little candy-colored Volkswagen Beetles parked on the street and say that its rear engine provided excellent traction in the snow, or that you were considering buying one because the price was so reasonable. Or, if you really wanted to piss him off, you might try praising the superior quality and craftsmanship of the Mercedes-Benz, that magnificent Teutonic driving machine that it serves as the official staff car of the Third Reich. A Jew, at least a Jew with half a brain in his head, would never say such a thing. It was always some goy who said it, usually while thumbing through the latest issue of Motor Trend in my father's candy store. And every time it happened, my father, who I'd heard, though not from him, had liberated a death camp in the final days of the war, and had seen the mountains of corpses, and had smelled the decaying flesh, and the skeletal survivors barely clinging to life, covered in their own filth. It was the kind of smell that never left you, my mother said, would look the ignorant bastard in the eye and say, "It's a Nazi car, schmuck." And if the schmuck continued to insist that the Mercedes was still the best-made car in the world, then my father would tell him that it was Jewish slave labor, courtesy of the concentration camps that built VWs and Mercedes. In fact, that's what he said about any product imported from the country he still called Nazi fucking Germany when he thought I wasn't listening. Yeah, we all hated the Nazis, if not necessarily their products. And if anybody didn't, he kept his fool mouth shut about it, because if you lived in Flatbush, you were surrounded by Jews, and Jews, having paid the price in blood, now owned the Nazis outright, and we could do anything we wanted to them. It was our birthright. If we felt like it, we could kidnap Nazis off the streets of Argentina, drag their arrogant Nazi asses back to Israel, and hang them from the nearest lamppost. And nobody, except another Nazi, would say boo, not to our faces anyway. Most people, if they knew what was good for them, would pat us on the back and give us a round of applause. Never again, motherfucker, never again. Or we could take it out on Mr. Kruger, our incompetent, uncooperative super, who couldn't keep the boiler and washing machines running, couldn't keep the halls clean, and spoke English with a guttural German accent that made him sound like a cartoon Nazi. My father called him that damn crowd, and the neighborhood kids, Jews and Goyim alike, called his wife Eva Braun, and him Mr. Hitler, usually as he was sullenly dragging the trash cans to the curb, which was the only job he seemed to do with any regularity. "Someday you kids will get in trouble for saying that," was the only thing he ever said in response. We also routinely beat the shit out of his blonde and suspiciously Aryan-looking twin sons, Walter and Carl, who were my age and had been relegated to the dumb class in school due to their language difficulties. Anytime we saw the twins coming down the street, they were always together, somebody would call out, "Hey Hitlers, gas any Jews lately?" Or the Goyish variant, "Hey Hitlers, you lost the war, now you gotta pay." Then one or more of us would pummel them with a flurry of body blows. But Walter and Carl were pacifists and stoics to boot. They never fought back, and they never cried either. They just stood there, barely defending themselves, and taking it until we stopped, which infuriated us even more and led to even more severe beatings until the Krugers finally took the hint and got the hell off East 17th Street, where they didn't belong and never had a chance.